If you haven't seen No Time to Die by now, well, stop listening to this episode. Hi, this is Dan.
And Tom.
Of SpyMovieNavigator.com and our show cracking the code of spy movies. James Bond is dead. As Charles Dickens wrote about Marley, dead as a doornail. Dead. All right, let's move on then.
You know, when you told me you wanted to do this thing on James Bond being dead, that was exactly where my mind went. I'm like,
there
that's
you go.
Dickens.
All right, we're decoding today the fundamental meaning of James Bond dying in No Time to Die.
You mean other than the fact that he's dead?
He's dead as a doornail. First of all, not one of my favorite James Bond movies for a lot of reasons, including the ending, the number of deaths in a movie called No Time to Die, and the whole Daniel Craig arc thing, which I am not a fan of.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that one. I mean, this whole arc thing, it was so inconsistent because it ignored much of Bond's past, but it still carried forward things like characters, gadgets, and cars. It just didn't make sense to me that they just totally ignored the storylines, but brought some of the people and stuff. Just thought that was really weird. And now going forward, are they going to have him be a Bond from the past or not? I mean, it's crazy. And
going forward, huh?
if you are, and if you are going to pull stuff from the past, why didn't you pull in Tracy, his dead wife?
Yeah.
Mention her at least.
Yeah.
I mean, now they've got themselves in a really nasty pickle, and I don't think that Bond, maybe he faked his death here, right? Maybe they're just one big fake out. I mean, he did that in one movie. It was different than what they appear to have done in No Time to Die.
Yeah, you mean You Only Live Twice. Now,
yeah. Yep.
Remember the headline in You Only Live Twice? British naval commander murdered. All right. In No Time to Die, well, there were no official headlines, but really the official headlines might simply be James Bond is dead. Okay.
Yeah.
We get it.
We get it. And they kind of hit us over the head with it with the toast at the end of where they're quoting Jack London.
Yeah. Let's talk about that toast down. Yeah. The toast at the end of the movie, No Time to Die, given by him in honor of James Bond, was:
the function of man is to live, not to exist. I shall not waste my days trying to prolong them. I shall use my time.
All right. Now, the full Jack London quote is: the proper function of a man is to live, not to exist. I shall not waste my days in trying to prolong them. I shall use my time. All right. This is like Neil Armstrong's first words from the moon in 1969. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. There was supposed to be an A in there. That's one small step for a man. But here, No Time to Die, they skip two words, proper and A. I don't know why, especially since M was reading it. I don't know. Now, in the novel...
Maybe M can't read. That's why he only uses one letter.
Yeah. Now, in the novel You Only Live Twice, Ian Fleming actually wrote into that story this quote that they used here in No Time to Die. When in You Only Live Twice, they didn't think Bond was coming back. They thought he was dead. He didn't return from the successful mission. Ian Fleming writes in the novel, You Only Live Twice. I shall not waste my days in trying to prolong them. I shall use my time. Okay, so they extracted this from a Fleming novel for the end of No Time to Die. Wow. All right. And even though Fleming was tempted to kill off Bond, he left us hanging at the end of the novel From Russia with Love, where Bond was actually cut by the poison blade and started passing out and having trouble breathing. But he never did kill off Bond. He was asked in an interview if he ever would, and he responded,
I couldn't possibly afford
it. But no, Eon Productions, apparently, they could afford it.
All right, so is Bond dead? By all interpretations that are realistic, I mean, the answer is yes. Yeah. James Bond is dead as a doornail.
Yep.
Now, we do know that James Bond is depicted in the last movie released. He meets his end, right? In No Time to Die. Now, the producer certainly had to make a decision that marked a significant and bold departure from the franchise's previous approach to all of the James Bond movies. I mean, even the non-Eon production ones.
Yep.
I mean, they throw us a bone at the end with the end credits where they say James Bond will return. Though there's been no date, no one has a clue what that means right now.
Yeah. We're going to analyze this decision to kill off Bond from several perspectives as to what Eon Productions may have been thinking in clarifying for us, the viewers and
Oh, I think you're
fans,
giving him way too much credit now.
yeah, that James Bond is dead. All right, let's look at what they may have been thinking. The character of Bond, his evolution, and some kind of closure. Okay. All right. Over the many decades that Bond survived, he evolved in many ways from a, I think, relatively static character into one with more depth and emotional complexity, as we have seen. And that went back and forth, though, over all the decades. Ian always played with Bond's character, making him more Fleming like and a blunt instrument of the government, then to a more affable guy like the Moore era, back to seriousness with Dalton and Craig, and somewhere in between with Brosnan. So playing with the character that we see on the screen has always been a part of the evolution of James Bond, if evolution is the right word, because, well, Bond bounced all over the map in terms of character development. I mean, let's look at the Daniel Craig era.
Please don't.
I hate even saying that. Killing Bond provided a definitive closure to his arc. How many times have we heard this? Completing his journey in a way that may honor the character's development. Well, maybe it honors it for Barbara Broccoli and maybe Michael G. Wilson, but really, personally, though many fans love it, I am not a fan of a Daniel Craig arc. A James Bond arc? Yeah, okay, sure. But I am not buying Bond going from getting his 00 license in Casino Royale in 2006, growing old, retiring, coming out of retirement, and dying all within 5 movies. Sorry, I don't buy it. I don't think Daniel Craig deserves his own arc as Bond. But really, he wanted one, and they went with it.
Yeah, I mean, kowtowing or bending your knee to a star, it's one sure way for a production company to mess things up. I mean, especially when it comes to closure. Based on what I've read, that's exactly what happened here. And if we think about it, when Cubby Broccoli was running things and when he was alive,
Yeah.
none of the Bond actor transitions required the death of James Bond.
No.
And that was through GoldenEye, which was Brosnan's first movie. So
yeah,
they,
but I mean, GoldenEye, he was actually a consulting producer, whatever that means. Broccoli was on that movie, but
yeah, but,
anyway,
to get to him, Dalton didn't die.
No, nobody died. Nobody
Right.
had to die like that. No, but when you say kowtowing, that always reminds me of our high school English class and synonyms we had to memorize and stuff. And how we remembered this was, yeah, he was kowtowing, truckling, and curry favoring as any sycophant would. And I think that applies here.
Easy
That's
for you to
exactly
say.
what they did for Craig.
Yeah, no, and so I said that they didn't do it through the Broccoli years. They
Yeah.
also didn't kill off Bond when Brosnan's turn ended.
Yep.
And it may have been because they didn't know they were going to get rid of him when filming Die Another Day, but
Yeah.
still. But
And when they got the rights to Casino Royale, they wanted to reboot. So
yeah, but why do you feel the need to kill him off at the end of Craig's run?
yeah,
It doesn't make sense based on the franchise history, and the history of this franchise is really important to the Bond fan. Now, if they wanted to end the franchise here and not put up James Bond Will Return and have No Time to Die be the end of the franchise, I actually would be in a much better mental state about this than I am now. Because that's really not a bad way to have him go.
Okay.
But although he gave up, which just is so unbond-like. But
yeah, let's
still,
stand there and die.
Either kill him off and end the franchise, or you keep him alive and pass that torch on to the next actor, like you've done throughout your history.
Yeah, I mean, hey, there are big fans of No Time to Die, and big haters too. It's
can tell which side we're on.
It's a divisive James Bond movie, and for lots of reasons. All right, so that was one reason why maybe Barbara and Michael were gonna give Daniel his way. The other one, okay, maybe they wanted a creative refresh, right? We're gonna do some things differently here. Yeah, the struggle for keeping James Bond going for decades has been to keep the old fans, gain new fans, and toy with the Bond character to make him relevant to the era in which the new movie is coming out. So we saw gadgets get sophisticated, technology that did not exist when Fleming wrote these masterpieces that now take center stage in developing and advancing James Bond movies. We saw all that. While remaining iconic, the franchise has to innovate to stay relevant. By killing Bond, the filmmakers they signaled a willingness to break from tradition like never before and take risks, big risks, which
Yeah, stupid risks.
may rejuvenate the series and may open up new storytelling possibilities. But as we said before, the producers and writers can just ignore what happens at the end of No Time to Die and just move on.
Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
Or they may innovate by returning to James Bond's past.
Yeah, now the issue is, I mean, we're clearly told with no room for guessing that James Bond is dead. He's dead as a doornail.
Yeah.
But the good thing about fiction is you can always write a solution to the death problem. Well, just by writing the solution. Could James Bond have
Yeah, just write
survived?
it.
I mean, we don't need magic or miracles for that to happen. Just a writer who says so. Now, we haven't had a writer on Bond for a while, in my opinion. So maybe they'll get
all
some
right,
new
here we
people
go.
here. But if they do this, oh, he didn't really die, I'm done with Bond.
Oh, okay.
There are plenty of good spy movies to watch. And that's the dilemma that Eon Productions put themselves in here. Now, I'm a huge James Bond fan, but if they pull a Who Shot JR or a Newhart ending on this thing, I think they've officially lost any credibility with me. And I know I'm not alone.
Okay.
And I know other Bond fans would disagree with me vehemently. But if they do pull that kind of an ending, they're going to lose a percentage of their fan base. And can they afford to lose even 10% of their fans with what these movies cost to produce?
Yes.
To me, this is just, that is not the way to go. And I'll get off my soapbox.
All right, Tom. So you do not want to see a Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. I mean,
Yeah,
Bond.
no, thanks.
Then, huh? Okay.
Please,
All right.
no.
I think it's more likely that they pull off the Wizard of Oz
Pay no attention.
than go the other route. So you might be safe there. All right, let's look at another reason why they may have done this deed and murdered Bond. Emotional impact. Of course. All right, we know how we all felt when we saw the end of this pretty long James Bond movie. The death of James Bond is a dramatic and emotional climax that adds weight, certainly, and gravitas to the story, for sure. If you want to make a pow impact on everybody, it enhances the narrative story, the evolution, and all the stakes revolving around James Bond and stuff. And it certainly leaves a lasting impact on the audience and fans. We're still talking about it. It's years later now. And, making No Time to Die a memorable and certainly unforgettable entry in the franchise catalog. Although,
I was going to say, can we make it a forgettable one, please? I mean, this only works if it's the end of the franchise, in my opinion. I mean, if Barbara and Michael wanted to be done, just be done with it.
I mean, there are real haters and real lovers of this movie. All right, let's look at another possible reason, a fourth reason, really, the continuity and reboot potential. They're always looking for reboot potentials. They're always looking for new ways to come back. Who's going to be the next Bond, all that kind of stuff. As we have seen, when one actor concludes his role as James Bond, there's always room for the possibility of a reboot, which they did with Craig in Casino Royale, or a fresh start with a new actor and perhaps a new take on the character. We've seen all of this. Doing this can reinvigorate the series, attracting new fans while keeping longtime fans who are intrigued about the future direction of what might happen. And we think a lot of fans are lost in this limbo now. What will happen to a dead James?
And I'm sure some of them are saying, who cares? Right. And I've said this before in other episodes.
I've heard people say
and,
that.
and I've said this before in other episodes, and I'm going to say it again here. By killing Bond, you've taken away his invincibility. In the past, he has always come up with a solution. And that's part of the cool part of watching those movies. If they go forward, I know how he bites it. Right. And I know that he does bite it.
Yeah.
And in future movies, we don't have to worry about it because we know how he dies. So of course he's going to get out and you don't have to worry about it. And so I think that his ability to get out of any situation no longer can be assumed, except we know how he dies now. And I think this hurts his character, no matter what or how they want to reboot things. For me, watching James Bond in a scene was me trying to guess, okay, how do you get out of how's he going to get out of this one? And
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
a big
yeah.
part of the enjoyment. And now I have to ask, are they going to kill him again? Or am I going to be thinking, oh, he has no problem. He doesn't die until the way he died at No Time to Die. So I don't have to worry about it.
Right.
And for me, this really
Yeah.
detracts from watching a character that was almost a superhero to his fans.
Yeah, I mean, how Bond got himself out of messes was a very fun part of watching a Bond movie.
And now
I
we get
agree.
to see how
And
Eon Productions is going to get themselves out of a mess.
yeah, and really, just to see how Q Branch, the gadgets Q Branch came up with and everything else somehow saved the day. I mean, all that was fun. Now they destroyed that. Okay, all right. Now here's where I think they really honed in on why they killed off Bond, because of Daniel Craig. They wanted to honor Daniel Craig's tenure for
Please.
some reason. I don't know why. I'm going to give Daniel Craig's portrayal of Bond a lot of credit. He has brought realism and emotional depth to the character, which was refreshing. Ending his tenure with Bond's death creates a unique but questionable conclusion that sets his era apart, certainly, from any other previous ones. The question is, does any actor's portrayal of Bond deserve this? Again, the arc thing and I do not get along. I don't like it. Does any actor deserve it? No.
Yeah, see, now you're talking about Daniel Craig's portrayal of Bond and giving him credit. Now, for me, I
Yeah,
loved Craig in Casino Royale. I thought he did a
that was the
great
best.
job there. But then
Yeah.
he evolved Bond, and I didn't like how, for me, it lost something. Now, it could have been on him, or it could have been on the writing. I mean, they were trying to
Yeah, yeah,
remove
yeah.
some of the things that worked in the 60s, but might not, might be a little cringeworthy today. So it could also be part of it was the writing. But under Craig, the character changed a lot. And in No Time to Die, prior to the end of the movie, forget the end of the movie, I didn't feel like I was watching James Bond anymore. It was some other spy
Oh,
that was there.
okay.
So I do not come to honor Craig's tenure. I come to bury it, except for the exquisite Casino Royale. I'm sorry, I have
Borrowing from
opinions
Shakespeare.
sometimes.
Nice. All right, let's look at the market and audience evolution, because this is all part of whatever goes into producing a movie and deciding what the heck to do in a movie. This is probably our sixth point or whatever. The movies have to evolve along with the audiences. That's just the way it is. This has been the Eon Productions mantra throughout their tenure of creating wonderful James Bond movies. They were constantly struggling with espionage movies versus action movies, and making James Bond movies more action oriented when action was selling. They looked to optimize their box office numbers. Hey, that makes sense. Contemporary audiences have different expectations and sensibilities compared to those from the time when Bond first was created in literature in 1953 and the first movie, Dr. No, in 1962.
Yeah, and you
So
can really
catering to
they're
that.
catering, but I think if you look at it, the influence of the Bourne series in particular and Mission Impossible on the Bond series has been very dramatic. The
Yes,
action sequences have dramatically increased in both numbers and the production costs of these things, because those are expensive things to do. And I
absolutely.
wonder at what point do these movies price themselves out of the ability for an audience to afford them?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. And also, the decision to end Bond's life here, it could reflect a shift towards this more complex and realistic storytelling concept and catering to the modern viewers' tastes. I mean, look, lots of heroes are getting killed off in movies these days. So, yeah, killing off Bond was indeed a franchise first, but hey, it's happening all over the place where heroes are getting killed off. So, hey, sometimes they're catering to the audiences now. But this is a big one. This is a big shift. The franchise is at a distinctive turning point now, a tipping point. We had a spoof podcast on ways that James Bond may have survived this dismal end here. Check that one out. It's called Come On, Bond, Where the Hell Are You? how James Bond can survive, but we're gonna.
Okay, let's forget the spoof part. Let's look at some more serious potential things they could do in the future
Yeah.
for James Bond movie than what we did in that spoof, because we were just having fun with that one, right?
Yeah,
Now,
we were.
so
All right.
as we've kind of said, they could always just reboot with a new Bond. I mean, fans have always looked forward to the naming of a new Bond actor and who's going to play him next.
Yep.
Another reboot could offer a fresh start. Maybe they can reimagine Bond's origins, or maybe take a completely new or fresh approach to his character. They could still maintain the Fleming elements that Fleming put into the character, except James Bond is dead.
Yeah, that's kind of important. The issue is reboot. Now, yeah, we know what reboot means sometimes. Reboot from the beginning, or you're going to reboot before the beginning. You know what I'm talking about? Will we see Bond being recruited into the service, for instance? Will we see a lot of stuff like we have seen in Star Wars, tons of prequels that develop the backstory of certain characters, including maybe here Bond, maybe M, maybe Moneypenny.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of that in the Star
Yeah,
Wars
no.
stuff. That's when I stopped
No,
watching.
no,
Yeah.
please no.
One thing is for sure, if they go backwards into Bond's past, they can have an unlimited universe in which to write new stories because it's all in the past. But how do you bridge the technology gap? Bond's past might be in the 1960s or 1970s or maybe even earlier. How do you incorporate what many younger viewers would want to see, modern technology, for instance, being used? How do you incorporate that? This could be an issue.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah. All right. I have another opportunity with doing what they did, killing off Bond, maybe more diverse casting. Okay. I'm going to say it that way. There's a big opportunity to cast a wide casting net. That's a little play on
As
words.
opposed to a casting couch.
Yeah. All right. Now, not only for Bond, who knows who might play Bond? There's a list that Tom and I are the only ones not on the list, I think, of who could play Bond. So, but for other characters as well, in backstory development and introducing new old characters and more. Bond could be a different race, for instance. There's been a lot of talk
Yeah,
about
and
that.
I agree with you on
So-
that one, because
that-
they kind of did that with Moneypenny with Naomi Harris. And I'm saying kind of because
yeah, right.
I'm not sure if she was a
Yeah, they did.
reboot of the character of the old Bond movies or they just took the name. She was definitely a very different character with Naomi Harris than what we saw with Lois Maxwell. I'm not
Yeah.
sure that it was good or bad, but she was definitely a
Yeah.
different Moneypenny.
A different
Yeah.
backstory.
And I think for Bond, if you keep him a male, the race of the actor shouldn't matter. I mean, they've already greatly
Yeah.
deviated how he looked from the books. So the race really, to me, should be irrelevant. But I think he,
yeah, nobody looked like Hoagie Carmichael.
yeah,
So, there you go.
exactly. Yeah, Daniel Craig looks exactly like Hoagie. But, you know, I think that Bond has way too many misogynistic tendencies, even today, to make a gender switch work. But a race switch is, to me,
Yeah.
whatever, right? If it's
Yeah. I don't think Bond is going to be a woman. 007 was a woman for a while, but not Bond. I mean, such a move would modernize the franchise and make it more inclusive and stuff, but would it broaden its appeal? I think a lot of fans would think not. Then again, if you do timepieces set in Bond's past, it wouldn't make any sense anyway to be changing gender. So that would be a tough one to sell.
I totally agree with you on that one. But again, the race one, yeah, it doesn't matter. He could be purple for all I care, as long as it's still he could be purple.
Yeah, there you go. All right, you can have another issue here that maybe they were thinking that they could explore new themes, new genres within this genre. Really, if Eon just says ignore what we did at the end of No Time to Die,
please.
then the future Bond movies might take place in the present and future.
Hey, I
as
got an
well.
idea with that, Dan. You know how you had George Lazenby? They never did that to the other guy, or whatever that line is, right?
Yeah.
They could have
This never happened to
yeah,
the
this
other
never
fella.
happened to the other fellow. They could have whoever the new Bond is. Boy, did we make a mistake with that one. I'm James Bond, and wave at the camera.
I'm back. Never
Yeah.
mind
Oops.
how. All right.
Sorry.
All right. So if they do that, hey, pay no attention. We ignore what we did at the end of No Time to Die. They could go into the future then. They have an option. They can go into the future and they could experiment with a bunch of different stuff. They could experiment with new problems that face the world today because they always were looking for current issues and current problems. They could look at new threats, cybersecurity, cyber espionage, biotechnology, AI, artificial intelligence, global corporate or espionage, corruption, all kinds of stuff they could come up with that's current that they could do in the future if they just say, ignore what we did at the end of this movie.
Because that's what they
They might
kind of
also
did in the
experiment with,
past.
yeah, they have done that. And sometimes, yeah, they have. They might also experiment with different ways of treating the traditional spy elements by mixing it up, maybe. I don't
What?
I wouldn't like if they do this too much, but they can mix it up with different, like with science fiction
No, they
and
can't make
psych dramas and
no,
horror.
no,
No,
Dan. No.
that would be horrible. That
Stop.
would be
Stop.
horrible, I think. Yeah. I mean, so in some sense, Bond movies have done that already. I mean, they're using technology that hasn't been invented yet, or kind of futuristic stuff. And then torture, we saw that, and certainly in Casino Royale and other movies as well. Psychodrama, there's been some of that too. But yeah, what else might they try to
Okay,
incorporate?
wait. I'm
I don't
gonna
know.
stop you for a second because I think that they need to be very cautious here. And I think generally the series has done a good job with this, trying to incorporate what is
Yeah.
bleeding edge, state of the art, what might be kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, they never killed off Bond before. And I know
Yeah,
when I reviewed the working files
not
that
really.
from Richard Maybaum when I went to the University of Iowa library for that, he was
Right.
constantly looking for new or just emerging things to address. He
Sure.
had clips from all
Makes
these
sense.
stories from some of the science magazines of this is an emerging technology or whatever. And some of them made them into the movies. Now, I have
Mm-hmm.
no idea if Purvis and Wade did anything like that. And I hope they're gone anyways. So hopefully the next writers will continue that trend. But my big caution here is that I think too many spy movies are incorporating and taking the easy way out with artificial intelligence. They're using it as
Yeah,
a
yeah.
boogie
Okay.
monster that is just this thing because a lot of people don't really understand what it is. More people are knowing now than they did when the last Mission
Yeah.
Impossible came out. But also, if they did use AI as a big threat, you're just copying Mission Impossible.
They
And that
just
would
did it.
not be a good look. So I want them to tread
Yeah.
lightly here. I like the idea of them staying what I call bleeding edge. This is coming in the future or maybe coming in the near future. That's cool. Just be careful there.
Yeah. And if they go to the future too, I mean, they'll have chances to continue to do some character development and focus on that a little bit. Certainly, the Daniel Craig era brought emotional depth and complexity to Bond's character, which it added to it. There's no question about that. That we saw things that we didn't see before in terms of him being injured and hurt and bleeding and all this kind of stuff, made him more human and so on. So that part is okay. So maybe in the future movies they could continue that trend, maybe focusing on Bond's personal life if he has one.
Well, every time
What do
he
we know?
tries to have one, they get rid of it.
Yeah, his vulnerabilities, relationships from his past, maybe persons from his past, and so on. They could make this character more relatable and maybe multifaceted and meaningful to a modern audience.
I hope
Maybe,
not. I hope not.
maybe.
'Cause then what do you do with the
Yeah.
kid? And stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah, they really have trapped
they really
themselves with
they
this
really have.
stuff.
And to me, it's not, I mean, it makes sense that Bond would have a kid with as many women as he slept with, right? Because my guess
Yeah.
is, at least they never showed us that he used protection, right? So whatever. But
I don't think they're going to
yeah, they're
show
not
us
going to show
that.
us
No.
that. But in the last few Bond movies, I didn't really think I was watching Bond as some of this character evolution
Hmm.
happened. It stopped feeling like it was James Bond. And
All right.
prior to probably the last three or four movies, he always changed over the years, but he always still felt like Bond. And I don't mind Bond having vulnerabilities. I mean, that scene in Casino
No,
Royale
I don't
when Le
either.
Chiffre is hitting him with that knotted rope, I mean, Bond was extremely vulnerable there.
That could hurt.
That would hurt. But the way they played that off was fantastic. Now, we know
Yes.
that came from
I
Fleming,
agree.
not from Purvis and Wade, and I'll just leave it there.
Right. Hey, all right. Purvis Wade, you're getting a little break here today from Tom. He only slammed you about 8 times so far. All right. They also have an opportunity, I think, by doing what they did, is to basically expand the universe
no.
of the Bond world. I think they missed a huge opportunity, though, here. And this is, I think, one area where I think Eon Productions could have done something good. The Bond franchise,
Well,
there's a
Amazon's
couple of
got it
things
now,
here.
so they could, they may relish
Yeah,
something
yeah,
like that. I thought.
yeah. They could have done spin-offs focusing on other characters within the Bond universe, such as other MI6 agents. But I thought, with No Time to Die and Lashana Lynch, they could have had a good opportunity to have Bond and Lashana Lynch as a 00 something, not 7, because Bond would have it back. They could have had future missions that incorporated both Bond and Nomi on missions, or include Paloma, for instance, as Bond's new best supporting agent, taking Felix Leiter's place. Leiter, unfortunately, met his end as well in No Time to Die, as did most people in the movie. And so they could have had future movies that incorporated both of them. Now you have a top female agent, 00 agent. You got Bond still a male, and still doing his Bond stuff. And you could have had them occasionally work together. Now, the spin-off stuff, I'm not thrilled with the spin-off stuff, but putting them together in future movies, I thought was an opportunity they absolutely missed by killing
Yeah,
off.
I think
That would have expanded the whole narrative world of Bond, and whole new pool of fresh stories that could have complemented the
well,
main
look at Mission
Bond
Impossible,
films that are replacing
right?
them.
It's the team.
Yeah.
It's not 100% just Ethan. So that would have worked, except like you said, they killed off Bond in the movie. They introduced those two characters, so you can't bring those two characters back because James Bond is dead as a doornail.
Yeah.
And I totally hope they don't do spin-offs. I mean, one of the reasons I don't watch
Yeah.
the MCU movies is there's too many characters, and it's just like, really? And I think their brand has been tarnished because of the way they did that. So that's an area I actually would, you talk about that as being a serious way to expand things out. I actually think that could be a death knell.
Yeah. I'm just saying they could have gone that route to expand the universe, but they did not anyway. And yeah, I'm not a big fan of the spin-offs either. But they could have incorporated these characters into the future James Bond movies, and they killed Bond.
No, and they
instead.
killed
So
Leiter.
they
Anybody who was worth
and they killed Leiter, and all of
Yeah.
Spectre and Blofeld and everybody else who's ever been in a Bond movie
because it was
before.
time to
So,
die.
just about, yeah. Another thing we might see, come to think of it, is a more serialized kind of, or interconnected series of movies, like we saw that Quantum was a direct follow-up and continuation of Casino. You might see more of that, where it's more of a long story being told.
You mean
over
an
the
arc?
years. Although
You just told me you didn't
just,
like arc,
no,
Stan.
no, not an arc, just a story. And Daniel Craig had his own "I'm Bond, I'm the only Bond. I went from 007, getting my 00 license, to dead." Yes, no, I hated that whole concept there. But this would be more like, hey, it's going to be a story unfolding, which it kind of was anyway. We were always looking for pieces in the past, right? In For Your Eyes Only, he walks into the graveyard, there's Tracy's grave. We're looking for things like that. That kind of stuff.
Okay,
I'm
not
talking about.
necessarily a direct, like Quantum was a direct
No,
follow on
no.
to Casino. Okay.
No.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Now
So-
I'll give you that then.
All right. So now you got to look at the technology. We mentioned technology before. What can they do? How are they going to integrate technology? Because again, they painted themselves in a corner. Bond has been great at this, thanks to Q Branch, right? Keeping up with technological advances. Future Bond films are likely to feature cutting edge gadgets and address contemporary issues like we talked about. Maybe it's artificial intelligence, maybe not. Tom doesn't want that.
Yes, please
Cyber
don't.
warfare, advanced surveillance techniques, all this kind of stuff that could be brought into future movies if they move ahead with Bond and not backwards into his past. This could help the Bond franchise remain relevant and engaging, attracting new audiences, which they have to do. They will continue to push the envelope if they place Bond in current environments. But that's their challenge.
Well, they've
have
always
to
done
say,
it,
ignore.
right? They've always pushed.
They have to say, ignore what we did, though. They didn't kill him, though.
Well, that's true.
Right? We just said this. Yeah, now he's dead. Did we mention James Bond is
Yes.
dead? Yeah. All right. So unless they pull the Wizard of Oz thing, it's unlikely that they're going to be able to do this.
Now, God, I hope that. Anyways, I got one here in terms of ways they could go forward. And one thing that I'd really like to see is some global and cultural exploration. I mean, James Bond movies have always been known for their exotic locales. And future movies could place a greater emphasis on the global cultural contexts. You got some of that in You Only Live Twice with Japan and bringing that culture in. You get a little bit of it in Octopussy, but there's a whole lot more that could be done with the Indian culture there. There's a lot of places that he could go to have a mission that is in a locale that's not just I'm here for 10 minutes in the movie and we go on. We focus the movie on it. And I think that would be really, really cool to see.
Yeah. You mean something beyond like Bond train Japanese?
Yeah, that was.
You Only Live Twice. Yeah. I think they could do more with the culture.
Yeah,
and
that
so
was just
on.
so bad.
The key here is the meaning of the word future. Future meaning the next Bond movie, he's dead. Future meaning, okay, ignore what we did. We're moving forward. Okay. Yeah, then they can do that kind of stuff. Like more of it. Although they could go backwards, I suppose, and do that too. But okay. All right. Let's look at tradition. Eon Productions has blown up tradition.
Blown up, sir!
So how do they innovate now? All right. While innovation is crucial because you kind of have to do that with movies, the future Bond movies will likely continue to balance new elements with traditional aspects of the franchise. They have to have something that ties what we believe to be Bond. Maybe high-stake actions, this espionage focus like we had in From Russia with Love, which was one of the most fabulous Bond movies ever. Espionage stuff before all the gadgets. Maybe multi-dimensional villains. Certainly Safin wasn't one of them. And maybe, of course, Bond always being suave and worldly and sophisticated. I mean, that's what we want. Don't take that away from Bond. Eon has balanced this fairly well for 60 plus years. So if they want to continue, they can do it again. They've done it. So ultimately, the future of James Bond is in the hands of Eon Productions and their plans to either continue the James Bond franchise, change it substantially, or kill Bond for good. Which will it be?
I really am intrigued to see what they're going to do.
Yeah. Well, if we had to tell Bond one thing, we'd tell him this. You only live thrice, Mr. Bond.
Oh, God.
Somehow the golden goose will rise again.
You really went there. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. His middle name, Phoenix. James Phoenix Bond. He will rise somehow from the ashes because there's money to be made. All right. That's a wrap. This has been Dan.
Dan Tom.
Of SpyMovieNavigator.com and our show, Cracking the Code of Spy Movies. Hey, subscribe to our show right now and always be in the know. Thanks for spending time with us. We appreciate it.